The voice in the storm. The wind on planet Krios 9 did not just blow, it screamed. It was a dead world, covered in miles of blue ice and jagged rocks. Here, the temperature was so low that it could freeze a man's blood in seconds. Deep inside a small, metal research base, Captain Leo sat alone. The base was a tiny bubble of warmth in a vast, frozen desert. Leo was a simple engineer, sent here to monitor the planet's core. His only company was the humming of the heaters and the ticking of the clocks. For 6 months, he had seen nothing but snow. Leo was sipping a cup of hot coffee when he heard it. Thud. He froze. It wasn't the wind. The wind was a constant howl, but this was different. It was a heavy, metallic sound. It came from the main airlock door, the only thing separating Leo from the deadly cold outside. Thud. Thud. Leo's heart began to race. Nothing lived on Krios 9. No animals, no plants, and certainly no other humans. He slowly stood up and walked toward the control panel. His hands were shaking. He reached for the intercom button. Is someone there? Leo asked, his voice cracking. For a moment, there was only the sound of the screaming wind. Then, a voice came through the speakers. It was a woman's voice, but it sounded strange, deep, raspy, and full of pain. Please. The voice whispered. I am freezing. I beg you, let me in. Leo stepped back in shock. A person? Out there? Without a specialized suit, a human would die in 3 minutes. I will reward you, the voice continued, getting weaker. I have gold. I have secrets of the stars. I have life to give. Just, please, don't let me die in the dark. Leo's mind was spinning. Who was she? How did she get here? He turned on the external security cameras. The screen flickered with static before the image cleared. Leo's breath hitched in his throat. Standing in the middle of the blizzard was a monster. She was huge, nearly 7 feet tall. She wasn't human. Her skin was covered in thick, dark red scales that shimmered even in the low light. Large, leathery wings were folded tightly against her back, but one of them was torn and bleeding. But it wasn't red blood, it was glowing purple blood, dripping onto the blue ice and steaming in the cold. She was a draconian. Leo had heard stories about them. In the galaxy, the dragon people were legends, and nightmares. They were a warrior race, known for their incredible strength and their ability to burn entire cities. They were proud, violent, and they hated weak species like humans. On the screen, the dragon woman collapsed to her knees. Her golden eyes were clouded with frost. She was dying. If I open this door, Leo whispered to himself, she might kill me the moment she feels warm. He looked at his sensors. The temperature outside was dropping further. The dragon woman's heart rate was showing on his heat scanners, it was slowing down. Her life was fading. Leo looked at the heavy steel lever. This was the choice. On one side, he was safe. He could sit in his warm chair, drink his coffee, and wait for the morning. By then, she would be a frozen statue, and he would be alive. On the other side was a choice that felt like madness. To open the door to a predator. To help a being that could crush his skull with one hand. I am so cold, the voice came one last time, almost a whimper. Please, human. Leo closed his eyes. He thought about why humans were even out here in the stars. Was it just to survive? Or was it to be something more? He remembered his training, never leave a soul behind. I'm going to regret this, Leo muttered. He grabbed the lever. He pulled it down with all his strength. Clang! The heavy gears of the airlock began to turn. The red warning light started flashing. The computer's voice echoed in the room, warning. Airlock opening. External temperature critical. The massive steel door slid open. Immediately, a blast of freezing white snow and ice roared into the base. The temperature in the room dropped 40 degrees in a second. Leo shielded his eyes from the blinding storm. Through the white mist, a massive, heavy shadow fell forward. The dragon woman tumbled onto the floor of the base, her heavy scales hitting the metal with a loud crash. She lay there, shivering violently, her purple blood staining Leo's clean floor. The door hissed shut behind her, locking out the storm. Leo stood there, holding a small medical kit, looking down at the most dangerous creature in the sector. She was in his house. She was at his mercy. And he had no idea if he had just saved a life, or signed his own death warrant. The dragon woman looked up at him, her golden eyes slitted like a snake's. She tried to speak, but only a small puff of steam came out of her mouth. The silence in the base was terrifying. The hunt had ended, but the story was just beginning. The hunter arrives. The sky over Creos 9 was no longer blue. 3 massive, jagged ships, colored like rusted iron, descended through the clouds. Their heavy engines created a thunder that shook the very foundations of the research base. These were the Scourge Raiders, the most feared scavengers in the sector. They didn't trade, they only took. Inside the base, the lights were flickering between red and white. The computer's voice was calm, which made the situation even more terrifying. Structural integrity at 85%. Unidentified vessels have landed at the north perimeter. Captain Leo wasn't looking at the screens anymore. He was busy in the storage room. He wasn't grabbing guns, he was grabbing canisters of liquid nitrogen, heavy-duty mining cables, and a box of industrial-grade magnets. Zara, the dragon woman, tried to stand up. Her legs were weak, and she had to lean against the cold metal wall. Her wings brushed against the ceiling. Human. Leo, she called out, her voice still raspy. You are a fool. The Scourge has a world-breaker cannon. They will flatten this base just to pick my heart from the ruins. Leave me. Take your small escape pod and go. Leo stopped what he was doing and looked at her. He held a heavy wrench in one hand. The escape pod only works in clear weather. Right now, there's a blizzard and 3 pirate ships out there. My odds are better inside this base. He walked over to a terminal and typed a command. Suddenly, all the lights in the base went out. Everything was pitch black, except for the glowing purple blood on Zara's bandages and the dim orange glow of the emergency heaters. What are you doing? Zara whispered in the dark. I'm an engineer, Leo said, his voice low and steady. On Earth, we have a saying, a man's home is his castle. You are my guest, Zara. And in my castle, I control the lights, the air, and the floor. Suddenly, the external speakers of the base crackled to life. A voice boomed from the scavenger ships outside. It was Vrax, the leader of the raiders. Human. We know you're in there. We can see your heat signature. We don't care about you or your tiny planet. Give us the draconian female. She is a prize that belongs to us. If you don't open the airlock in 60 seconds, we will blow the door and kill everything inside. Leo didn't respond. Instead, he handed Zara a small device. This is a tracker. If they get past me, press this button. It will overload the base's reactor. They won't get you, and they won't get your heart. But I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't come to that. Zara looked at the small device, then at Leo. She had met kings and gods, but she had never seen a creature so small stand so tall. Why? She asked. Why die for a stranger? Leo smiled in the dark. Because it's the human thing to do. Clang. A massive explosion rocked the front of the base. The scavengers had used a thermal charge. The main airlock, the same door Leo had opened for Zara, was now a twisted piece of scrap metal. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the hallway. Leo could hear the raiders laughing. They were loud, arrogant, and carried heavy plasma rifles. There were at least 10 of them. Search every room. Vrax's voice commanded. Find the dragon. If the human gets in the way, melt him. Leo was hiding in the shadows of the ceiling's ventilation shaft. He watched as the first 2 raiders walked into the main corridor. They were aliens with 4 arms and glowing red eyes, wearing scavenged armor. They reached the middle of the hallway when Leo pulled a thin wire. Suddenly, the floor plates beneath the raiders shifted. These weren't just floors, they were heavy industrial magnets used for moving cargo. Leo had reversed their polarity. Crunch. The raiders' metal armor was slammed into the floor with the force of 10 tons. They were pinned down, unable to move even a finger. Their bones cracked under the pressure of their own suits being pulled by the magnets. What? It's a trap, one of them screamed. From the darkness, Leo didn't fire a gun. He threw a canister of liquid nitrogen into the air and shot it with his small welding laser. Boom! The canister exploded, releasing a cloud of gas that was -200 degrees. The raiders, already pinned to the floor, didn't even have time to scream before they were turned into statues of ice. Vrax, standing at the broken door, stopped. He looked at his frozen soldiers. He felt a shiver of fear. He had expected a fight with a dragon, but he was being hunted by a ghost in a jumpsuit. Human. Vrax roared, his voice trembling with rage. You think these toys will save you? I have 100 more men. I will burn this base to the ground. Leo's voice came through the base's intercom, sounding like it was coming from everywhere at once. You're wrong, Vrax. You're not in a base anymore. You're inside a giant machine. And I'm the one who knows how to turn the gears. Suddenly, the walls began to hiss. The oxygen levels began to drop. Zara, watching from the medical bay, realized that Leo wasn't just defending, he was playing with them. He was using the environment of the dead planet as a weapon. But then, a loud alarm went off. Warning! Hull breach in Sector C. Vrax had sent a second team to cut through the back of the base. They were heading straight for the medical bay where Zara was trapped. Leo's face went pale. He couldn't be in 2 places at once. The suspense was breaking. The hunters were closing in from both sides, and Leo's traps were running out. The alarm in Sector C sounded like a death bell. Captain Leo ran through the dark, narrow maintenance tunnels. His lungs burned, and sweat dripped down his face. He knew the scavengers had bypassed his main traps. They were no longer playing games, they were using heavy drills to eke through the base's skin. In the medical bay, Zara heard the screeching of metal. She tried to stand, but her legs felt like lead. Her wings, still half frozen and torn, felt heavy. She looked at the door. She could hear the heavy breathing of the raiders on the other side. Open it, a voice roared. Vrax, the scavenger leader, was right outside. The door hissed open, but not because the raiders broke it. Leo had opened it remotely from the vents. As the 3 massive, 4-armed aliens stepped into the room, they didn't find a weak human. They found a room filled with thick, white fog. Leo had released the fire suppression foam, mixing it with steam to create a blinding white screen. I can't see, one raider yelled, swinging his plasma rifle wildly. Suddenly, a shadow dropped from the ceiling. It was Leo. He didn't have a laser sword or a supersuit. He had a heavy industrial nail gun and a welding mask. Thud. 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 The high-velocity metal nails hissed through the fog, pinning one raider's hand to the wall. The alien screamed in pain. Leo didn't stop. He kicked a canister of pressurized oxygen toward them and threw a small flare. Boom! The small explosion didn't destroy the base, but the shockwave knocked the raiders off their feet. Leo landed near Zara, breathing hard. He grabbed her arm. We have to go. Now. Leo shouted over the sound of the crackling fire. Zara looked at him, her golden eyes wide with shock. You came back. I told you I have nothing. I am a poor dragon. My hoard is gone, my people are scattered. There is no gold for you, Leo. Leo pulled her up, his muscles straining under her weight. Stop talking about gold, Zara. In my world, we don't save people for a paycheck. We save them because it's the right thing to do. Now move. They stumbled into the hallway, heading toward the heart of the base, the reactor room. It was the most reinforced room in the facility. Behind them, Vrax emerged from the smoke. His face was burned, and his red eyes were glowing with pure hatred. He saw them retreating. You think you can hide, human? I will tear this base apart piece by piece until I have that dragon's heart. Leo and Zara made it inside the reactor room and slammed the heavy blast door shut. Clang. The locks engaged. For a moment, it was quiet. Only the low hum of the reactor filled the air. Zara slumped against the wall, her strength finally returning as the heat of the reactor warmed her scales. She looked at Leo, who was checking the security cameras. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were steady. You humans are strange, Zara whispered. The galaxy says you are small and weak. They say you are only good for building machines and trading. But you fight like a demon for a stranger. Leo sat down on a crate, catching his breath. Maybe the galaxy doesn't know us as well as they think. We've spent thousands of years fighting wars on our own planet. We know how to survive when the odds are zero. Zara reached into her small, scorched leather bag. She pulled out a small, glowing crystal. It was deep violet and hummed with a haunting sound. This is a dragon spark. It is the last piece of my home. Vrax wants it because it can power a fleet of ships. To me, it is just a memory. She held it out to Leo. Take it. Use it to power your escape pod. If you stay here, you will die when they break that door. Take the reward of the poor and go. Leo looked at the crystal. It was worth more than his entire life's salary. It was beautiful. Then, he looked at Zara, a warrior who had lost everything but her pride. Leo pushed her hand back. Keep it, Zara. If I take that, I'm no better than Vrax. I made a promise to protect my guest. And a human promise doesn't have a price tag. Zara's eyes softened. For the first time, she didn't see a small human. She saw a soul that was as powerful as any dragon king she had ever known. Then I make a promise to you, Leo, Zara said, her voice becoming deep and melodic. A dragon's promise. If we survive this night, my life is yours. My fire is yours. My wings will be your shield until the stars go cold. Suddenly, the entire base shuddered. A massive explosion hit the reactor room door. The scavengers were using their ship's main cannon to blast through the base. The cameras showed Vrax standing outside, holding a detonator. Last chance, human. Open the door, or I blow the reactor and we all die in the fire. Leo looked at the reactor. He looked at Zara. He saw a panel on the floor, the emergency coolant pipes that ran directly under the base and out into the frozen crust of the planet. Zara, Leo said, a crazy idea forming in his mind. How much heat can your scales take? Zara smiled, her sharp teeth glinting. I was born in a volcano, Leo. I am the heat. Good, Leo said, grabbing a massive wrench. Because I'm about to turn this entire base into a giant pressure cooker. The suspense reached a breaking point. The door was glowing red from the heat of the scavengers' torches. The end was coming, but Leo wasn't afraid anymore. He was a human engineer, and he was about to show the scavengers what happens when you trap a human in a corner. The reactor room door was no longer silver. It was glowing a bright, angry orange. The heat from the scavengers' plasma cutters was so intense that the air in the room started to shimmer. Captain Leo knew they had less than 2 minutes before the steel turned into liquid. Zara, listen to me carefully, Leo said, his voice fast but focused. He was ripping open a floor panel, revealing a network of massive, frost-covered pipes. These pipes carry liquid ammonia to keep the reactor cool. If I reverse the flow and bypass the safety valves, I can turn the entire base into a steam bomb. Zara stood next to him, her wings half spread. She could feel the power returning to her blood. But Leo, if you blow the reactor, this whole mountain will vanish. You will die too. Leo looked up, a small, tired smile on his face. I'm not going to blow it. I'm going to prevent it. But I need you to be my shield. When that door breaks, they will shoot everything they have at me. I need 10 seconds to hit the final switch. Zara stepped in front of him. Her scales began to smoke as her own internal dragon fire started to wake up. You gave me your warmth when I was freezing, human. Now, I will give you my life. No bolt shall touch you. Boom! The blast door finally exploded inward. The heavy metal slab flew across the room, smashing into a computer console. Through the smoke and fire, Vrax stepped in. He was wearing a heavy exosuit now, making him look like a metal giant. Behind him, dozens of scavengers poured in, their red eyes glowing with greed. Finally! Vrax roared, his voice distorted by his helmet. The dragon and the engineer. A pathetic pair. He pointed his massive plasma cannon at Leo. Give me the heart, or I'll melt you both into the floor. Leo didn't look up. He was waist deep in the floor panel, screaming at the computer, override. Code 7-7, Alpha. Vent the coolant. Kill him. Vrax ordered. The scavengers opened fire. A rain of blue plasma bolts filled the room. But Zara was ready. She let out a roar that shook the very foundation of the planet. She wrapped her massive, obsidian-scaled wings around Leo like a protective cocoon. The plasma bolts hit her scales, splashing like water. She groaned in pain, but she did not move an inch. Now, Leo, she screamed. Leo slammed his fist onto the final manual lever. At that moment, the entire base hummed with a terrifying, high-pitched sound. The scavengers stopped shooting, looking around in confusion. The floor began to vibrate so hard that some of them fell over. What is this? Vrax shouted, looking at his sensors. The pressure, it's off the charts. Welcome to the human pressure cooker. Leo yelled from behind Zara's wing. Suddenly, the pipes Leo had opened didn't explode. Instead, they acted like a giant vacuum. The freezing, sub-zero air from the blizzard outside was sucked into the base at incredible speed, while the superheated steam from the reactor was pushed out through the ventilation shafts. The result was a thermal shock. The temperature dropped from 100 degrees to minus 100 degrees in 3 seconds. The scavengers' high-tech weapons, heated by constant firing, couldn't handle the sudden change. Their guns began to crack and explode in their hands. The metal of Vrax's exosuit started to warp and snap. My suit. It's freezing shut. Vrax screamed. He tried to move, but the metal joints of his armor had locked solid in the ice. The scavengers panicked. They tried to run back to the airlock, but the hallways were now filled with a thick, freezing fog. They couldn't see, they couldn't breathe, and their technology had failed them. But Zara was a creature of extremes. The cold didn't kill her now, it only made her internal fire burn brighter. She stepped forward, shaking off the ice. She looked like a goddess of war, her eyes glowing like 2 stars in the mist. She reached out and grabbed Vrax's helmet with one hand. The metal hissed under her touch. You hunted me when I was weak, Zara hissed into his face. You thought this human was just a snack. But you forgot one thing about humans, scavenger. She looked back at Leo, who was standing up, covered in grease and frost, but still holding his wrench like a sword. They don't need magic or wings to be monsters, Zara said. They have brains, and they have hearts that don't know how to quit. With a powerful shove, she threw Vrax across the room like a piece of trash. The scavengers were defeated, frozen in place or running for their lives into the deadly storm outside. But the victory felt short-lived. The base's alarm changed tone. Warning, reactor stabilization failed. Total meltdown in T-5 minutes. Leo's face went pale. The thermal shock, it cracked the reactor's core. The trap worked too well. The base was dying. The planet was screaming. And they were trapped deep underground with no way out, the base was screaming. Red emergency lights pulsed like a dying heart. The computer's voice was no longer calm, it was distorted and glitchy. Warning. Reactor core. 10% stability. T-180 seconds to total annihilation. Captain Leo wiped blood and grease from his forehead. He looked at the main computer screen. The thermal shock had saved them from the scavengers, but it had cracked the reactor's cooling shell. In 3 minutes, this entire research base would become a small sun, melting everything for 5 miles. Leo! We must go! Zara shouted. She stood tall, her wings fully extended now. The heat from the failing reactor had acted like a battery for her. Her scales were glowing with a fierce, golden light. Leo looked at the escape pod controls. The pod won't launch, Zara. The blast doors in the hangar are frozen shut from the liquid nitrogen I released. We're trapped. He sat back, exhausted. He had fought off an army with a nail gun and engineering tools, but he couldn't fight physics. He looked at Zara and gave a weak smile. At least the scavengers didn't get you. You're a legend, Zara. You should live. If you can use your fire to melt a hole in the ceiling, you might be able to fly out before it blows. Zara looked at the ceiling, then at Leo. And you? What will you do, human? I'll stay here and keep the pressure stable as long as I can, Leo said, his voice quiet. It'll give you an extra 60 seconds. Go. Be the legend the galaxy talks about. Zara walked toward him. Her footsteps were heavy and powerful. She didn't head for the ceiling. Instead, she stood right in front of him. You humans, she whispered, her voice like rolling thunder. You are so small, yet you carry the weight of the universe on your shoulders. You offered me warmth when I was a poor stranger. You defended me when I had nothing. Do you really think a dragon would leave her heart behind? Leo was confused. What do you mean? Zara grabbed him. Her grip was firm but surprisingly gentle. She tucked him against her chest, wrapping her massive, heat-resistant wings around him like a suit of living armor. Hold your breath, engineer, she commanded. She didn't use a door. Zara gathered all the fire in her soul and let out a roar that was louder than the reactor. A beam of pure, white-hot energy erupted from her mouth, hitting the ceiling. The thick reinforced steel and miles of blue ice above them didn't just melt, they evaporated. Boom. The reactor hit zero. A massive blue explosion consumed the base. From the outside, the frozen mountain of Creos 9 seemed to shatter. A pillar of fire shot into the dark space. But out of that fire, a shadow emerged. Zara flapped her wings with enough force to create a hurricane. She shot out of the explosion like a golden arrow, carrying Leo inside her protective embrace. The shockwave hit them, pushing them higher and higher, past the clouds, until the air became thin and the stars were bright. They landed on the highest peak of a distant, frozen mountain, far away from the ruins of the base. Zara slowly opened her wings. Leo tumbled out into the snow, gasping for air. He was alive. Not a single hair on his head was singed. Zara's wings had taken the entire blast. Her back was charred and her scales were dull, but she was smiling. We made it, Leo panted, looking at the distant mushroom cloud where his home used to be. Zara sat down, her massive tail carving a circle in the snow. She reached into her leather bag and pulled out the dragon spark, the glowing violet crystal. You said you didn't want a reward, Zara said. But you didn't realize what I truly meant when I said I was poor. In my language, a poor dragon is one who has no one to fight for. Tonight, you gave me a reason to fight. She crushed the crystal in her hand. It didn't break into pieces, it turned into a liquid light that flowed into Leo's communication device on his wrist. Suddenly, the device began to glow. It started broadcasting a signal so powerful that every human ship in the sector would hear it. That signal is a mark of alliance, Zara explained. It tells the galaxy that the Draconian Empire is now a brother to humanity. No pirate, no scavenger, and no empire will ever touch an Earth ship again. Because if they do, they answer to me. Leo looked at his glowing wrist, then at the dragon woman. He realized that by saving one poor soul, he had saved his entire race. A few hours later, the sky filled with lights. Not scavenger ships, but human rescue frigates. They had followed the legendary signal. As the human ships landed, Zara stood up, her wings shimmering in the dawn light of Creos 9. She looked at Leo one last time. The galaxy is a cold place, Leo, she said. But as long as there are humans who open their doors to the freezing, the fire will never truly go out. She took flight, disappearing into the stars, leaving Leo to be rescued. He stood there, a simple human engineer, holding a cup of snow that was starting to melt from the warmth of the rising sun. Humanity was no longer alone. And the galaxy was about to find out that weak humans were the most dangerous friends you could ever have. The end.